Is it working? Can y'all hear me? I better check. Can y'all hear me? Let me know in the comments if you can hear me. I don't know if you can hear me. Am I going? Oh, okay. They see me. We'll be starting in 4 minutes. If you have questions, hi Sarah. If you have questions about what's going on, please let me know. I'll try to answer them before we start class. It's Naja. I see you guys. Woo! Okay. Please excuse my mess. So how are you guys doing? You guys doing okay? Because I know the world's crazy right now. So you got toilet paper? You got food? Morning, Evan. I don't know if it'll be fun, but it's definitely going to be an interesting experience. I'm doing okay. Are you doing okay, Evan? Hi, Kayla. I see you too. You had to create a channel to chat. Interesting. Glad to hear it, Evan. Oh, a couple more minutes. I'm sweating in this thing. You guys might get to see my cats. I have 5 of them. Hi, Evan. Or Ivan. Sorry, I read that wrong. Hey, Jacob. I woke up 5 minutes ago. You guys are funny. I'm glad you guys are making it and this is working. Hey, Taylor. Speaking of a cat, there you go. Yep, that's one of the 5. I have 5 guys. If we're lucky, the one that likes to chirp on my shoulder might jump up here and say hi. Hi, DT. Hi, Cam. All right. Looks like it's 9, so we will start first. Do you guys have any questions about what's going on, about any of the schedules that I sent you, about when the midterms due or any of that stuff? Let me know so I can make sure I address them before we leave. I probably won't do that until after we talk, but at least we'll have them all set and in the chat and whatnot. So today, if you can't tell by the title, we're going to be discussing Utopia and dystopias and conformity and those types of things for all of the for the 4 papers choices that you guys have. If I can talk today, you can tell it's been a little while. So first of all, I want you guys to try to come up with the definition of a utopia. So what is a utopia? And I'll give you a few minutes to try to think of that and leave me comments on what you think a utopia is. This thing has some really cool features. Anybody want to make a guess? What is a utopia? Where you put multiple stories together would be an anthology, but you're on the right track. It is definitely fiction. So we have a few comments here that are right. Perfect society where everyone is happy and is successful, absolutely. An ideal world, an imaginary place. Yep. Making something perfect, a custom society. An imaginary world where everybody is happy. You guys got it. Okay, so my next question for you guys is then, can a utopia actually exist? Just a simple yes or no question. Can it exist, a utopia, where everybody's happy, everybody has peace, everybody has prosperity? Can we make a world like that? A whole lot of resounding no's. Do you guys know why we cannot have a utopia? No. I'll give you a hint too. It has to do with what we all want out of life. Definitely because people are weird. Because people are greedy. Absolutely. People want more than others. And so that's a reason that we can't have a utopia. People are selfish. Absolutely. Because everyone is different and looks at life differently. And that's one of the keys here, because everybody's utopia looks different. My utopia would be a whole lot of coffee and books and good food. And I'm sure some people don't like reading, and so that wouldn't be their utopia. Okay, so with that in mind, knowing, because people look down on each other, absolutely. With that in mind, we're going to talk about dystopias, because since there is no such thing as a utopia, often we guise fictional utopic worlds as dystopias, which means that there's something wrong with it. So we're going to, I would normally have you take notes on this. I don't know if you really need to, since you're going to be able to replay this and whatnot, but these are going to be, these characteristics of dystopias are going to be part of your paper. So let's talk about it. Dystopic characteristics. So there are many common traits, we already talked about it, that create a dystopic society. Utopia is a perfect place. So the definition. A dystopia is a negative or undesirable society. They're often seen as dangerous and alienating future societies, or present societies, as it were. So this simply means that there is something wrong with the society and keeps it from being utopia. Any of those things that we were talking about, people being weird, being greedy, being selfish, looking at things differently. So there are 8 characteristics. Here's our first one. Society. Most impose severe social restrictions on community members. Now, this is typically rules of society, laws that they create that's more than just keep people safe, but actually restrict freedoms that don't hurt anybody else. There's also a social stratification. So social class is strictly defined and enforced. We do have societies like this currently in which there's a caste system and people can't really go up or down in the system. I believe is it Hindu that does that? Don't quote me on that. But I do know we have societies that already act like that. We also have something that's called a ruthless egalitarianism. And egalitarianism is somebody who believes in the principle that all people are equal and deserve equal rights and opportunities, aka how we are supposed to see America and our equalities amongst each other. Now, the reason they use ruthless is because it's exaggerated, because it's satire, it's exaggerated far beyond what we would normally think of as equality. And there will be an example of this in Harrison Bergeron, which again is one of the 4 texts that you'll be using for your final paper. And an example of that is when they have made people absolutely equal. So 100%, you can't be smarter, you can't be stronger, you can't be better looking than anybody else in society. And so they might have somebody who has a speech impediment as a broadcast journalist who can't really speak on TV, but that is their job because of this idea that absolutely everybody has to be equal, and we have to force it so much that people are likely to have jobs that don't fit them, like having a midget in the NBA. It's trying to make people equal, but it's still not equal. Okay, I could probably ramble about that for a while. So, and then there's repression of the intellectual. So people who are not smart enough to fight for themselves, that's why they try to keep people from being too smart, because otherwise there'll be upheavals and rebellions and all those other things. So society. Number 2 is social groups. And there's a total absence of social groups other than the state. And this often happens in places like China, where you can't have independent religion. You have to believe in what the state believes. They are so adamant about that they put a lot of their Muslim refugees into camps and try to reform them, try to make them eat bacon and drink beer and all these other things to try to make them completely fit within their society, so that there's no differences between them. So there's a lack of social groups other than the state, no independent religion, and the family is attacked. And this creates hostility toward motherhood, aka family units are broken. And we're going to see this when we watch Equilibrium, how they can easily turn in other family members who break the law because there's no real attachment to it. Other examples would be Divergent, where you have to think about your group or your faction before you can think about your family. This is also present in the Hunger Games and in The Giver and in The Island. If you know any of those, they are great examples of satirical dystopic that separate family and break down that unit. So 3, nature. Characters are isolated from the natural world and they are conditioned to fear nature. This once again makes me think of the Hunger Games. They're not allowed to go outside that fence because if they do, like some of the characters do, like Katniss Everdeen does, they can hunt for themselves, they can provide for themselves, and they don't want people to be able to leave the cities or the governing place to fend for themselves. They want to keep control over the citizens, once again, creating that dystopic sense. Number 4, political. So the government asserts power over its citizens, usually, once again, ruthlessly, without regard of any freedom and that type of thing. They're also flawed in some way or portrayed as oppressive. And that's once again to keep the people down, to keep control of them. And we're filled with this pessimistic view of the ruling class. They rule with an iron fist. And I'm not sure if you guys have heard of that before, but it's simply ruling with violence or violence sake and promising violence to people who don't adhere to the rules or the laws of society. 5 is economic. So the state is in control of the economy. Are you seeing a trend here? The state is in control of so many things. So they're in control of the economy. They set the prices. They decide who gets what, which means that there is a black market. This, once again, is referencing Hunger Games. It's a very popular dystopic text, so hopefully you guys are familiar with it. But items are banned or seen as contraband, and so the people will find a way to get a hold of those things and share them or sell them with each other. And then there's often a privatization in business, meaning that the rich get to keep control of the money and the poor don't get any cut of it. And again, the people who are in control get to gouge and raise prices and all those other things on the people who don't have. Right. 6 is the hero. This is the protagonist. He or she questions society and often has intuition. Once again, I think of the giver and how he could see the colors, and that lined him up to be the giver and to receive the memories and all those other things. He already had a feeling that something was going to happen. This is also going to be present in Equilibrium when we watch that. And the only way that they know that something is wrong is by having that feeling, because remember, the state and everything around them is telling them one thing when they're feeling another. And so they only have 2 options. They can escape or they can rebel. And most of the time we see them rebel, because otherwise it's not a very fun story. And then finally, 7 is conflict. And we have a societal group somewhere under control or not under control of the state. This is the rebellion, District 13, the factionless and divergent, all those people who do not fit in somewhere, who want to change the way society is with the protagonist. And I lied, there's one more. 8, finally, is the climax of the story, which means that there's going to be either the protagonist, the hero, is going to die, or he's going to be re-educated and conform. Now, there are some where the hero actually gets to live and change the world. Again, we saw that in the Hunger Games. I think we saw that in Divergent. I don't really remember much past the first one. And we're going to see this in 1984. The protagonist was re-educated or reconformed after a long, long torture. We're going to see this again in Equilibrium. I'm not going to spoil the ending, but one of these options is going to happen. So, all right. So now we're going to get on to what essentially is your assignment that we're going to work on a little bit together. Usually I have you guys do this in groups. It's kind of hard to do that currently. So let's apply these with Toulmin terms, because remember, all of the Toulmin terms play an important part in your paper, and they all match dystopic text. So jot down your answer to these 7 questions. I will email you these 7 questions after this class is over. We're probably going to get done a little early, if I'm being honest with you guys. Nothing new for you guys there. So 1, let's talk about the main claim. So you have to think of, what is the major issue about society you would like to satirize? Every main story has that big issue that they're satirizing. And of course, you're going to exaggerate it to make a point about that, to make us feel foolish about whatever that is. And I have some examples for you guys here: racism, obesity, technology, disabilities, education, environment, oppression and control, or something more specific, like you might have something about music, about sports, about medicine. Any of those things would be fine topics to create an issue about. So pick one of those for number 1, something a little bit more specific than what I gave you. What about those things? So number 2, the subclaims. Does this issue have smaller issues associated with it? And it should. What rules or societal norms spring from this issue? So within racism, we have the idea of segregation, which would be a smaller issue within that overall arching problem. With obesity, we have health issues. With technology, we have a reliance on our technology and our inability to do some things without it. We have the treatment of people with disabilities and seeing them as less than in society, and that is a major issue. We have within education, if you are not educated, that means you can't think for yourself. With the environment, we have limited resources, and therefore we might have a battle between 2 types of groups for those resources. Within oppression and control, we would have a dictator's rules, which are likely going to be exaggerated and fit for their morality rather than something that fits the majority of the people, or again, something more specific within medicine, sports, music, etc. Number 3, data and support. So what is true about your fictional society that shows these issues? These would be where you provide plot point examples. So within racism, you might have features outlawed, like having, if we reverse this from how we normally think of it, having blue eyes being illegal. So nobody can have blue eyes, and any baby born with blue eyes might be put to sleep almost immediately, etc. That would be, again, an exaggeration, but features being outlawed within racism. For obesity, if you guys have seen WALL-E, it always makes me think of this, how the people grew fat and unable to move on those chairs. That would definitely be an issue for obesity. For technology, having it take over or be deadly, we often hear of stories where an AI gets consciousness and then ends up killing all of humanity because it doesn't believe that humanity has the right to life because we're destructive creatures. Within disabilities, we might have a death sentence, somebody who is blind or crippled or any of those things, as we used to actually do a long time ago, leave them out in a cliff to die as a baby. People used to do these types of things. That would definitely be a plot point for disabilities. For education, we might have slavery or servitude, because if you are not educated, people can take advantage of you. For the environment, again, we would have high prices or price gouging for those materials, those limited resources. Under oppression, we would have limited freedoms, and give an example of what those freedoms might be, or again, one of those more specific for something that you choose for your fictional society. All right, for Warrant. So how do these issues reflect current social norms, and what context links to our society? So this is where we're starting to take that step from what we are making believe to actual real world issues. So again, racism, institutional racism. We definitely have far more Black men in jail than we have anybody else in jail because of how the police and how the system treats them. An example of that will come up in the next slide, but I'm sure you guys are already thinking of some of these examples in your head. For obesity, it would be the availability of food, of good food. If you think about especially people who do not have enough money, where do we usually find food? We get food in the fast food line, so a dollar menu. We have prepackaged meals. Fresh food and fruit cost way more than a dollar box of mashed potatoes, instant mashed potatoes. So the availability of good, healthy food limits people from having healthy bodies, and therefore are more likely to be obese. For technology, we have addiction and attention span. We talked about this early in the semester. How long do people typically pay attention now? Well, when we're on our phones and it dings, it distracts us. So that creates the attention span, and also that addiction. We can't seem to go anywhere without it. We always need it for something. And so having that belief leads to other problems. For disabilities, what we believe people with disabilities can contribute to society. A lot of people don't believe that they can contribute to society, and I'm not saying everybody, but since that's a belief, that would create a warrant. For education, the idea that knowledge is power. If you have knowledge, you can stand up for yourself, you can understand that people are taking advantage of you, etc. For the environment, once again, we have that idea of supply and demand. We know if there's more demand and there's less supply, the prices are going to go up, and vice versa. For oppression and control, there's just simply, we understand that there's a lack of equality. There is usually a tier of people who get things. If you think about communist Russia, it used to be the people up top had almost everything, and people out in the country pretty much starved to death. Although I'm getting ahead of myself, that's the next section. And then again, more things specific to whatever it is, whatever topic it is that you guys chose or choose. So 5 is backing. So this is the specific events that demonstrate or explain real life issues in connection to the warrant. So you're going to quote current events and history like I started to do a minute ago. So again, racism, we can actually give numbers or percentages of the minorities in prison. We could give an example of how it's damn near illegal to look Mexican in Arizona. They've actually made it law where they can legally profile people who look like they might be Mexican and put them in jail. And deport them pretty much immediately, especially if they don't have ID. So we could probably think of a lot of examples for that. You only need one real life example to quote. For obesity, we can talk once again about cheap food, about that dollar menu, about how expensive it is to eat healthy, how expensive it is to have equipment to work out properly, to have a physical trainer, and all those other things that help us keep from gaining weight and to help us be healthy. For technology, perfect example of this we've talked about before, texting and driving. How many people have died or injured somebody from not being able to wait till they're at their destination to pick up their phone? For disabilities, I told you guys this example before, but they used to be left for dead. People who were going to be too hard to take care of were just left to die, babies left to die. I'm going to try not to say that too many more times. All right, education, one of the examples of this is how we kept slaves and indentured servants. Being slaves and indentured service was partly a lack of education, a lack of ability to stand up for themselves. Also a lack of communication, which comes with that movable print. And often, I know slaves used to sing songs and give calls to each other in order to communicate without other people knowing, showing an intelligence, but a lack of education to actually implement sometimes some of the ways that they could make their lives better or free themselves from tyranny. Right? And then the environment, perfect current event, the ability to access toilet paper and water right now, ability to go outside of our home. That is definitely part of what is going on. Our environment is very dangerous currently. So we are lacking certain goods in our homes, and there's a scarcity because of that. So people who have more money were able to go stock up on things where people who live paycheck to paycheck were not. With oppression and control, one of these things I often think about as an example of this is like mutilating people for traditional sake. There is a couple of, oh my God, I can't think of the word, groups of societies in Africa that whip their women when they hit maturity. And this is actually a proud moment for them to be mutilated and show off their scars. There's also, of course, genital mutilation that happens to both men and women in various different societies because of the rules placed by either a dictator or the governing body. And then, of course, more specific examples for whichever one that you chose or choose. Keep saying it past tense like we're not talking currently. 6 is the rebuttal. So who is your hero? How do they combat these issues? Describe them and the actions that they may take. So for racism, it might be it's likely going to be a minority that stands up for everybody else. And in obesity, it might be a nutritionist who goes and takes over trying to help people from being obese. Technology might be an app developer that shuts down your phone when you're driving or keeps it from trying to ping you every couple of seconds so that you can have more control over your life. In disabilities, it might be a disabled veteran who stands up for himself or fights inside some type of war or battle to help his society and show his worth or her worth. I hate to say here that it's just a man that can do that. For education, it might be a teacher that comes in and sneaks and tries to teach people certain things so that they can better educate themselves, like teaching orphans to read or something of that sort. For the environment, our hero might be a garbage man because he takes away all of the gross, disgusting things that keeps us safe. For under oppression, it might be an inventor who's able to help us create something to overthrow the dictator, or again, something more specific. And then finally, there's 7, the qualifier. So what keeps society from changing? Who is the overlord? What's been set in place that perpetuates the problem? So in racism, there's people who have the positions of power, keep those who don't have the power pretty much under attack and busy with other things so that they can't combat those who have the power. Same kind of thing with the oppression. With obesity, it's fighting habits and addiction. Cheap food, McDonald's and whatnot, is addictive. It tastes good. It makes us feel good, at least initially, not so much afterwards. But we have the habit of eating these things or habit of overeating, which causes us to continue to be obese rather than fix the problem. In technology, we live in a fast-paced world. We have FOMO. We don't like to be disconnected because then we'll miss out on something, or we might lose out on a job opportunity or an ability to make money or to network and those types of things. for disabilities, this is essentially just perspective of value, who we find value in, and how we have to change our perspective to value people who we don't see as normal. And usually our inability to change that is what keeps society from changing. Also plenty of examples of that. In education, it's just the lack of availability. Having movable print, having the ability to learn things, to have teachers, to be able to go to school, all of those things and the lack of ability will keep people from being educated, from changing the problem. In the environment, as we talked about why we can't have a utopia, greed. People are greedy, and so they think of themselves versus others. And then, of course, in oppression, it's tradition. We've always done it this way, so we're always going to do it this way, and it's very hard to break tradition. So those are your 7 questions that I need you guys to type up quick answers to. You do not have to give me an actual story. I just want lists or 1 or 2 sentences for each one of those. So if you guys want to talk to each other in the comments to try to create these together, please feel free to do that. Or if you have an idea that I haven't addressed and you're wondering if that will work, please let me know. But I'm pretty much just gonna sit here and let you guys work on this. So you don't have to stay. You can just go and answer those questions and send them to me via email, or you can sit here and try to work them out with me, and I'm fine with that either way. So I'm going to send you guys those questions right now. So let me know if you have any concerns or whatnot, and I'll try to answer them now for you guys. I don't know what I just clicked on. Yes, you absolutely can use one of the topics that I gave you. Absolutely. You do not have to use real people for your hero. You can absolutely make up somebody, and it can be as realistic or unrealistic as you would like. I'm going to put these questions in the comment so you can copy and paste if you need and email it to you. Ooh, shit. Okay. That turned out weird. No, I can talk about the midterm now if you'd like. So essentially what you guys are going to be doing for the midterm is giving me the final drafts. No, you don't have to stay on after this class. So the midterms, I need your final draft of your autoethnography, your group paper. I need your final draft of your ad analysis or the commercial that you wrote about, and then just a simple paragraph or so about what you're struggling with and what you feel like you're doing well in your writing so far this semester, so that I can try my best to give you more lessons about fixing the problems that you feel like you still have. Other than that, that's the entirety of your midterm. So also remember not to use second person you, otherwise you're going to get a 0-1 style. So use that find option, which is Command F for Mac and Control F for PC, and it will literally highlight all of them in your document. Do you guys have questions about that other than that? That's all I need from you guys is those 3 things: final drafts of your paper and a paragraph explaining what you're doing well and what you're not doing well in. And by the way, next class we will be going live again. If you did not receive the schedule, we are going live next class and on Friday. You're welcome, DT. Oh, good question, Evan. These are due on the 6th. in my email by the end of the day. I know it says 9 on the schedule, but by the end of the day, please. Ivan, for the next class, I have that uploaded. It should be live in the next 15 minutes. All you have to do is watch it and answer the quiz. Taylor, I am emailing them to you right now because that ended up going up terribly. You're welcome. There we go. Questions sent to your emails so that you can copy and paste them far more easily than that weird comment thing that happened. Yes, the questions are also in the description of the video, which should remain here after we're done. Should be a playback option. Let's see if I can't edit. Oh, they are. Look at that. I did already put them there. Thank you, Sarah, for reminding me. I did put them in the description box for you guys to access. So what happens when you do things late at night and you don't remember that you did them? Evan, we have a couple of students who stay for an extra hour after our first class, and that's what they're talking about. It. If you're not in that class, you don't have to worry about it. Bye, Evan. You have a good day, too. Yes, you're just emailing me your answers. DT, there is a quiz for next class. Again, that's not going to be up for another 10 minutes. I've scheduled it for. By next class, Kayla. The answer should be due by next class. Kind of into details. I want enough to know that you know what you're talking about. So whether that's a list of examples or a couple sentences that explain, but it doesn't need to be anything too drastically in depth. I don't need paragraphs. I don't need a full story, if that's helpful. You're welcome. Have a nice day, Kayla. Thanks for showing up. I'm glad this is working out. I was so nervous.